right, welcome back. We've got Festus Osifo, President of Trade Union Congress, and Pangerson here in the studios. And then we've got Comrade Joe Ajoro, President of Nigeria Labour Congress, joining us virtually. Gentlemen, good morning, and thank you for joining us today on the program.
Yeah, thank you so much. Good morning, Nigerians.
All right, Comrade Ajoro, let me start with you on this matter. Today was supposed to be that day, but there are several perspectives that is out there this morning concerning why the protest or the strike was shelved. So if you could just tell us what is if there's anything as the main reason why this is not going ahead today.
Well, the reasons are out there in the media on why the action was suspended. Clearly, we had a meeting Sunday that government procured an ex parte order. As flawed as that order will look like, we needed to prove to government that we obey court order. We needed to prove to government that we follow the rule of law in all its ramifications, despite its shortcomings. Because on the day they invited us for a negotiation by 4 p.m., government had already gone to an industrial court, with the plaintiffs as the Attorney General and Minister for Justice. For any lawyer or any judge to accept Minister of Justice as a plaintiff in a case like this is flawed in all its ramifications. And we looked at it, and they even gave an order, sent 3 trucks of policemen to come and best that order at our office. Now, it is only when somebody refuses to take service that you can go back to the same court to get an order for substituted service. But this one, as it was being pronounced, they just brought it, and pasted it anywhere. But that's not even the issue. The issue is that despite that, we still went ahead to hold negotiations with government. And to us, if what we have agreed on have religiously implemented, Nigeria will be the best for it. We may differ, on the issue of implementation, on the issue of how Nigerians perceive it. But one thing that is clear is that the issue of subsidy, the issue of pump price of PMS has become a recurring decimal in Nigeria. Each time government announces a figure and we negotiate, they remove 50 naira or 20 naira or 30 naira, they will still tell you they are still subsidizing with 50 naira or 20 naira. But we now went for an alternative. We went for that alternative which will serve the better interests of Nigerians, not just the working class. If we had wanted to go for the issue of the working class on their benefit, we would have gone on only wage review and minimum wage review, which was the carrot, that the president was flying with a group of governors. The same governors who have not been able to pay minimum wage. We were talking of wages. We didn't want to fall for it. So that was why we had a holistic approach on the agreement we signed. And we had to suspend an action for 10 days since we are meeting again on the 19th, the same day the court adjourned, for sitting.
All right, comrade, there's an account that says, quote, TUC, saying this was also suspended because government had met all the demands of TUC. Is that correct?
No. Government have not met all the demands of TUC, but when we first met with them I think on Sunday, so we gave them the shopping list. So when we gave them the demands, they said, okay, they would take it, internalize it, and they will give a response to it. So to say government has met all the demand, no. Meeting demands means when there's an agreement, So there's no agreement, talk less of them implementing. It's until they agree and implement that we could say that they have met the demand. But as it is today, what has happened is that we gave them a list, we read through it, we discussed them, so they accepted that, okay, they will go back, they will look at it, and that will now form. If you look at the communique that was signed, the number 7 said that government is going to assess the demand from TUC. So during that meeting, that is when the holistic review will now be done.
Well, let me go back to Comrade Ajero. I'm very surprised that you say that it was because of the court order that Labour decided to shelve its strike. I was under the impression, and you could correct me if I'm wrong, my impression was wrong, was that there had been a conversation. I mean, you were at that meeting, and perhaps was owing to some, negotiation that had gone on, that had, Labour had seen reason to shelve its strike, not because of a court order. Was that correct? I mean, I assume that government had gone to court in the event that they were not able to convince Labour, or persuade it to shelve a strike on Wednesday. Wasn't that what transpired?
Well, if you look at it from the point of this or that, neither this nor this, you'll be giving the analysis. But I know that my explanation was that we went for an alternative instead of the recurring decimal of increase, reduced by this, reduced by that. And that we got that alternative on ground. And that we got other demands, an agreement that by 19th, we'll look at the mode of implementation. With the technical committee, I equally mentioned to you that even before we went for that meeting, that government has brought an order. But that didn't stop us from going into a meeting with them, and ABCD were the things we got, and on the basis of that, we suspended an action not called off, for a meeting to be held on the 19th. I didn't say that it was principally because of the court order. I gave it as a narrative based on the question, posed to me on what happened and what transpired all this while. And that was bringing up the issue of government and going to court as trying to dialogue in bad faith, that it wasn't a good faith, and the position of the court of weaponizing the issue of ex parte, trying to use a backhand, trying to use a shortcut that does not serve any good, that is not credible in a democratic dispensation. It was on that premise that I drew that analogy of the court and what transpired, and to show you that, despite this is what we got, and we are continuing by 19th of June.
All right, then. I'm a little curious. So this negotiation is going to go on the 19th of June, you have said. But so far, we're yet to see the list of demands that NLC, that's the Nigerian Labour Congress, is putting on the table. Or is it aligning with the demands that has been made by the Trade Union Congress?
Well, the meeting that produced that agreement was a meeting with the NLC. The TUC met with government on Sunday, and on Monday, the NLC met with government. And all the items there, though they may coincide with what the TUC sent, were proposals and the list from the NLC. And the TUC will send for them in order to be on the same page as people fighting the same objective. They joined the meeting, as the session with government has concluded. And now, rather than listing out A, B, C, D, 1, 2, 3, that of the TUC was added, including the list, with the TUC. So if you look at all these items that I mentioned, were discussed by the NLC, and then we have to harmonize it with the list with the TUC. I don't think there's any ambiguity about that, because if NLC didn't present anything, the other list wouldn't be there and say, and the list presented by the TUC.
All right, so let me come to you, Comrade Festus. I'm looking at your own demands here. You segment them into immediate implementation, medium term, and I think I'm trying to see if there's anything for, okay, they're just immediate and medium term. So looking at number 1 on the list, you're asking status quo ante of PMS pump price should be maintained while discussion continues. That hasn't been done at all.
Yes. So when we met at the neck level of TUC, so there were different options. So the options were, okay, 1, should we stall the negotiation or discussion and ask government to return the pump price before we continue discussion? So when we had that conversation, so there were different opinions. Some people argued that if we let's assume government today return back the pump price to say that, okay, they want to have discussion for the next 1 month till the end of June. So the argument was that what is going to happen? That marketers are going to hoard, that the same workers and the same Nigerians that we are pushing, or rather we are wanting to protect, are the same people that will bear the brunt. 1, they will pay even much more higher price, and secondly, there will be long queues across the fuel stations. So it now came that, okay, while we are insisting that you return back, but we should still continue the conversation and the discussion. So that was the resolution that came from the TUC's neck. So for us, we have insisted that let them go back. But beyond that as well, even on the table, before we commence any conversation, that is the first thing we discuss. And we make them understand the reason why they could go back. That if they go back, they could also, at the end of the day, they have the machinery and the instrumentality of office to be able to push it through. So but beyond that argument, we will now go into some other discussions. Like, for example, okay, you asked a question to my colleague earlier. I mean, it's very clear. The demands are all, they're literally the same. I mean, we're talking about what can we do for the working class, both in private sector, the public sector, what can be done to the vulnerable Nigerians. The demands are the same. So I don't think labor demand differs in any way. So if you look at what was put out there, it's practically the same. So coming down to that, beyond that they should return back, that we have insisted. But we now also went on to have other conversations. That was what was done on Sunday, by going through the list one after the other. And topmost of them was the salary and wage increment. Then beyond that, we went into other areas. Yeah.
But does it mean number 1 no longer valid, or what? You just forget about that one and move on to the other ones?
I know. If you see what is that number 1, it was qualified. Why discussion continues? So what that means is that we did not say that you must do number 1 before you go to number 2, because at times you could say status quo ante must be maintained before discussion continues. But the resolution, if you look at the communique that came out from our neck, it was status quo ante should be maintained while discussion continue, not before discussion will continue. So for us, we are insisting on that. So the fact that we are insisting on that, we are not stalling the discussion and negotiation at all.
You know, I find it, because while you were explaining what number 1 was, I mean, what your demand was for number 1, you also mentioned the fact that there were differing, stances by members of your neck. Some, they already looked at the consequence, what the possible consequence of insisting on number 1 will be. And so sometimes you have to ask if Labour, really thinks through all of. Some people say, well, this is a shopping list, and you now find that that's why they call it negotiations, right? But when you have something as crucial as number 1, saying status quo ante or PMS pump price should be maintained, and you already know that this could be the possible consequence of that particular demand, is Labour sometimes realistic with the demands that they make?
Yes. So yes, again, when you discuss, it's not actually these things are not easy solutions. You don't just put things there that you think that at the end of the day, okay, let government just pick item 1, 2, and 3. So it's holistic, it's a basket. So when you make some demand, you also need to pressure government. You will not just go there and at the end of the day, for example, somebody was asking me the issue of minimum wage. Okay, you just go there and say, okay, government move it from 30,000 to 40,000. These are not just easy solutions. So even when you understand, government will make an argument from their end, Labour will make an argument, but it is also the responsibility of government to implement some certain things. For example, it is very easy for government to tell us, and some of our people too, they also realize that, okay, if you do that, there's going to be queues and all that across board. But if government is also sincere, and if government is serious, they can also, they have the police, they have the DSS, they have the security to also enforce on certain things. If you see at a time when there was a strike, you saw the way the DSS came out. But beyond that, without the DSS, beyond just statement, you could go into these stations and get some things done. For example, if government comes out to any of these fuel stations and they say that they are holding products and they dispense those products, if they do it 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 times, I will tell you that other stations will queue and they will start doing what is right. So government also need to implement some certain things as well.
You know, let me ask Commodore Jero, you know, that there are some who think your members, they're in these sectors almost in every area and they have figures themselves. For instance, when government says we don't know how much PMS we consume, but probably we know how much we draw from the source, they wonder. Labour can have those figures as well. Then challenge government, say, look, this is what this is. And if they say, look, we can't pay minimum wage, and Labour says they can't pay minimum wage, the government will say, well, show us that we can pay some of these things. So is it that we're missing the point, or has Labour done this previously and we don't seem to get it? Explain that for us, if you will.
Well, I don't want to go into the issue of leadership, you know, and then the workers and the people being led. I equally believe that even the media, you know, has access, even by Freedom of Information Act, you know, to get more information than a worker, probably one worker in the finance, you know, who is a member, the one in operation, the one here, the one there. You see, if we take it, you know, which is not true, that government has been spending all these trillions on subsidy and on and on, it is not at the level of the worker that these policy issues, that these transactions take place. That is the fact. That's the clear fact. You know, and those who are supposed to know, those who are supposed to verify these problems up there, are not. Even when we come up with claims, you know, proper claims, it is waived by the side. Before now, while this negotiation has been on, we have been asking, can you give us the list of those people you are paying subsidy to? Who are they? What are the companies? What are they doing? You know, or do you move even refined products from the creeks to maybe the headquarters, and then you put amount of it in terms of subsidy has been produced from abroad, and then you tell Nigerians that it's subsidy. Now, what happened if during Jonathan we were talking of 335,000 barrels, and then suddenly now we are talking of almost 70,000 barrels, you know, in that order. So what led to this sharp increase? So all that is surrendered by, you know, when I say corruption, and which needs to be investigated. It's not the worker that will investigate this. It's not the worker that is in control of DSS, police, EFCC, ICPC. So as a nation, you know, we have to come together. We have to come out. Let this government not, you know, waive aside the issue of subsidy, payment of subsidy or not payment of subsidy. It must be investigated. If in a hurry and you say subsidy is gone, there is something that is being hidden. Can we find out what has happened and those that are receiving this subsidy money?
All right, we'll go to break, but we'll return and then bring in our colleagues from Lagos as well in just a moment. Do stay with us.
Yes, welcome back to Sunrise Daily. We still have leaders of organized labor on the program. Comrade Festus Osifo, President, Trade Union Congress, and Comrade Joe Ajaero, President of the NLC. And we're still looking at the matter on the front burner at the moment, subsidy removal and the consequences. Let me start with you, Comrade Ajaero. I wonder if you've seen the papers today. They're awash with stories about labor selling out. And in the past 2 days, politicians have been tackling labor of having started off on the wrong footing because NLC had endorsed the presidential candidate ahead of the elections, and therefore they're negotiating from a very faulty position. Also, you presented strong positions at the beginning of this negotiation, stating that NLC was going to go on a nationwide strike, and in fact demanding a probe of the subsidy regime. I wonder what your response would be, to these issues, particularly surrounding the NLC.
Well, I wouldn't know whether these issues are informed issues. It is glaring to everybody in Nigeria that Labour Party is owned by the NLC. Owned by the NLC. And no leader of NLC can deny that, and Labour Party all over the world is formed and owned by the trade union movement all over. Nigeria is no exception. So that's not the issue. But even when this issue of fuel subsidy was analyzed by various political presidential candidates, the NLC was clear, and I could remember, stating it on this same channel, that if the Labour Party candidate goes into that, he will even have a double punishment from the Labour movement, because that runs counter, to our charter of demand that was given to him and the ideology for which the Labour Party was formed. That is clear. So if anybody is saying that because of that, Labour Party, NLC is standing on the wrong footing. Since 2003, when the Labour Party was formed, on and on and on, we have remained on that trajectory. And nothing, I repeat, by tomorrow, NLC will still, support the Labour Party, which it formed, can't abandon it. But that doesn't mean that NLC is not made up of people from other political parties. I can give you an example that my colleagues as deputy president with me is now the governor of Kebbi State under the APC. We all rallied around him. Anything level, we work with it. So that one is cleared. On other analysis on what we said when this happened, if you check from the beginning of this history of fuel subsidy, that has been NLC position. This is not a new NLC. Adam Soshomole did not deviate from this, on this issue of subsidy. Abouhid Omar did not. Ayuba Waba did not. Now the approach this time around, in terms of finding a lasting solution from us, is what I can say we brought a new dimension to it. Now we have been talking about the prices from Adam Soshomole to date. 20,000, when they increase it to 200, we negotiate and maybe get 180. When they negotiate it 300. But this time around, we say, is this their headache? Is that there is subsidy? They are subsidizing 2 Naira, tomorrow is 10 Naira, tomorrow is 100 Naira, you can't get it. We have to work on an alternative to this. And that was why, before now, we looked at the issue of CNG from the year 2000, and which we felt is a viable alternative. And it's an alternative for the masses. Because somebody was talking about that.
Comrade Ajaero, before you begin to talk about the CNG, your affiliation with the Labour Party compels many to begin to ask whether in your strong advocacy, initially for a strike and also for a probe of the subsidy regime, whether you were being sponsored by your presidential candidate, to toe that line. And of course, there are other more compelling questions, which is at the twilight of the administration of former President Muhammadu Buhari. Hold on, pardon me. When Nigerians suffered greatly beneath the weight of the Naira redesign policy, why NLC did not call for a nationwide strike? Why, in fact, it did not embark on a nationwide strike to protest that policy?
Well, maybe the people are not current. When I came on board as NLC president, We gave the central bank 1 week. And anybody living in this country, even a beggar on the street, will tell you what happened. That was why Nigerians are benefiting from it. They didn't wait for that 1 week. They rushed to the office, and we compelled them to work on Saturday and Sunday. And that's the Naira you are seeing everywhere. I want an informed, position by those people making that allegation. On the issue of our being, even the Labour Party candidate was talking of, subsidy removal, although the mode may be different. And we said, if you do it, you hear us. So the idea of the fact that we formed a Labour Party, doesn't mean that if Labour Party does anything wrong. And it's an insult, let me repeat it, for whosoever must have said this, to say that the Labour Party is not dictating for NLC that formed it. That's the worst insult anybody can say. So if people are going to cheap blackmail, it should not be such. We determine, what happens in Labour Party to a large extent. So please, I think we can go into clear, classical analysis, not to turn things up and down. Who is the Labour Party and their candidates to tell NLC what to do? What we are doing now, has it not been consistent with what we have been doing on the issue of fuel subsidy? So please, let's go into this matter without blackmail.
All right, Comrade Ajaero, let me come to you very quickly, Mr. Osifo. We've been talking about, the subsidy removal before you came on board in this segment, and, at the heart of the conversation was the lack of communication from the administration. But more importantly is, what is being communicated, and I wonder what you're gleaning in your continued negotiations with the government, which is, what is available in the first place. How honest has government been? Or the government has said that what's on your list is not impracticable. But we know that this administration has inherited over 70 trillion naira in debt, and top on your list is a demand that the minimum wage be increased from 30,000 naira to 200,000 naira. How practical is this in the light of what is available in government coffers? And of course, there's also that concern, that labor's representation only covers about 10% of the workforce.
Yes. No, I think for us, we clearly believe that what we have demanded is reasonable. But when you are going to make demands, you don't just start from the final point. It doesn't work like that. So how did we arrive at about that 200,000 naira? Because if you look at, when the last minimum wage was negotiated, then what was the value in terms of $10? It was something around $3 per day. So if you compute that $3 per day, you use the current value of dollar in the parallel market. So you are going to have 3 times about 30 times about 760. So that will take you to a particular value, maybe something around 70,000 naira. But you also know that this current administration is pushing for a unification of exchange rate. What that may mean is that the exchange rate officially would likely go up again. So when that goes up and government does not have the effects to meet the demand of the import obligations, what is going to happen in that regard is that it may also push the parallel market forward. And what we pay today, literally, it as a result of a value of the exchange rate at the parallel market. So clearly, when that happens, even if today, if the realistic compared to where we were as at 2019, it's supposed to be around 70,000 naira today. But if you look at where it's going to be between now and the next 3-4 months, if what the president said during his inaugural speech that they want to unify exchange rate, because in Nigeria, what will likely happen is that the official rate will most likely go up. That will drive forward the parallel market rate. So what that means is that value is that 70,000 will be further watered down. So when you now compute that, you'll be getting over 100,000 plus. So there were some scientific thought that went into that, but that was our demand. So let government come, we will prove it to them on the table why we think that the demand is reasonable. Again, governance is not a tea party. Governance is not something that is easy. You know, government is not just about you coming in, sharing federal allocation, then at the end of a month, you collect few taxes here and there, and you go to bed. If you cannot meet your obligations, you go and collect loan. That is not the function of governance. You must put on your thinking cap. You must think beyond your extraordinary. That is why in St. Klein, what is normally done, people that occupy those positions are people that can think, and not just you sit down and you, I mean, there's no easy solution. So for us, we think that when they come to the table, we will prove it to them why we think this is realistic and this can be done. Yes, there's another argument that says that even the 30,000 naira, some states are not implementing it today. Clearly, they have told us that when subsidy is removed, that a lot of funds will be made available. So it's now also left for us in the labor movement to compel every single state and even the private sector to do the needful. But coming to the second half of your question, as I said that the demand is catering for one side of, I mean, just for the organized workers. I know there are some certain things there that cut beyond that. If you look at the demand that we submitted, like as alluded to by my colleague, explicitly clear on the issue relating to CNG. If that is faithfully implemented, it cuts beyond the working class. It goes around even to the people all across different strata of the Nigerian society. Well, if you also look at what we put there, things about mass housing. If you look at what we put there, things about energy cut across the working class. It cut across board. Well, things about the reduction in the cost of governance.
Allow me to butt in for a bit because we are running out of time, and I'd like you to take this very quickly, you and yourself, Mr. Comrade Ajero. Well, you spoke about the CNG program of government. You know, the question a number of people would ask is why it hasn't taken off. It's 2 years old already, and I remember it was even in 2020 that the whole idea was initiated under the economic recovery program of the previous government at the time. So one wonders, from your own understanding, what started then, and if there is going to be a review, what is going to be done differently to ensure that it's not stopped? Please speak in the line of the fact that this project will not be executed by the federal government, but by members of your association.
Yes, you know, now that we are entering the other phase earlier, we were discussing that before now, but at the time, you know, the government, they came about, the former Minister of State, talking about the gas expansion program. I mean, they brought in the CNG, and it was a conversation that we were having. But at the time, government abdicated. They abdicated because they said they were not really ready as at then to remove subsidy. So, if you remember the pronouncement of the president as at then, that the subsidy will remain. So, they did not come for discussion. We pushed them and we pushed them for us to sit down and look at this framework. Yeah, even an agreement that we signed as at then, they failed to implement. But this time around, the difference between then and now is that if you look at that communique that was signed, it was written that the labor centers are going to be involved. And that involvement of labor center, we must compel them to do what is right. Because if tomorrow, for example, we sign the memorandum of understanding on the way forward, it is our responsibility to ensure that from day one they must implement, because if they don't implement, I think they will have the entire Nigerian class to contend with, because they've given several reasons why in the past they were not able to
Mr. Sifo, to really see how Labour will take that on, because we don't want to have to come back to this conversation again. Mr. Jero, just before we go, you know, part of that conversation involved a review of the World Bank financed cash transfer scheme and proposed inclusion of low-income earners in the program. The question that comes is, World Bank again? Is it anything to do with the $800 million that the previous government was talking about? Another loan, or what exactly is that about? Help Nigerians understand so they can agree with Labour.
Well, this program is not the program of the labor centers, but it is that same 800 million they procured from World Bank.
So we are still going to take that loan?
I think they must have collected the loan. So it is that loan they have collected And while we try to, see what we can do with it, including all these programs, the government team insisted that this money is for maybe their normal sharing. Now, we go back to school with them to say, okay, you don't have the statistics, you don't have the data. The people you are paying, are not the right people. And you can't pay people 5,000. So it is entirely a new thing in our engagement with them. Because, you pay people, you don't know their names, you don't know their account numbers, you don't know their details. So this is an exercise that must start afresh. And in that agreement, we widened it. Because you can't say 50 million Nigerians are the poorest of the poor. When the National Bureau of Statistics have said 133 million people are multidimensionally poor. So we have to widen it. We have to think of things that could make sense, not sharing 5,000 to people that are unknown. So it's going to be a taxi one. It's going to be one that we have to start afresh if it must be credible, if Nigerians must believe in it, if it will not be the same process of sharing money to unknown faces or diverting the money. So that is not going to be an easy task.
Okay, Commander Osifo, what is next now? Is there a timeline with government within which some of these things have got to happen, or will negotiation continue in perpetuity, or what?
Yes, so that's the plan. So when we meet on the 19th, even before that 19th, there will be some other discussions going on for us to understand their thinking and to narrow down to, because they certainly will not come and say all your demands, we accept them 100%. So, but when we now meet, we are going to define each of those items, and a timeline will now be put on them. So from the 19th, after the meeting of 19th, the timeline on each of these items are going to be revealed.
All right, Comrade Joe, just as we round up, civil society put up a statement and they say this fight is beyond the NLC and TUC, as they only represent an infinitesimal percentage of Nigerian working people, while the vast majority of the people currently bearing the burden and brunt of this scenario are in civil society and the private sector. And if you look at the list of demands put out there, where you talk about number 4, tax holiday for employees in both government and private sector that earn less than 200,000 Naira or 500 USD monthly. Number 5, PMS allowance be introduced for those earning between 200,000 and 500,000 Naira or 500 USD to 1,200. And they just thought, what about the pensioners, those who are artisans? Where do they fall in all of these demands?
In as much as I will not disown that a list of demands, since it was provided by my colleagues. Those demands are genuine. And I want to agree with the civil society, that they are separate from the trade unions. They are separate from the labor center. And there are instances where the civil society has moved on, like during the Abacha regime when NLC was dissolved. I equally say during 1988, when some of us were students, under the NANS, we came out to challenge that government that led to formation of DFRI and others, and which he called civilian coup, and he created 1 million jobs. The civil society can on their own move to the street. The civil society can on their own take action, if they feel that what we have done now is not representative of their demands. Principally, the NLC, the TUC have been carrying the burden of not just the workers, but the civil society, the private sector, and everybody. So they could play a complementary role. Now that we are negotiating, if they disagree with us, they are not under any compulsion, to remain on what is happening. What happened affects everybody. Even the judges that gave that judgment, it affects everyone. So I think the civil society can take it further from where labor stops.
All right, just one more thing, Comrade Osifo, and quickly, if you can. When you list all of this and say they should implement this and that with this class of people, what templates do you expect government to use if they were to put in place any such thing called palliatives?
What templates.
In terms of the data, how would you know who is what? How would they get several people or the right people to benefit from this?
Yes, that is a question. If you listen to what the NLC president said, it was so apt, because part of when he said he wanted to send 5,000 to the vulnerable Nigerians, we told them, no, you can't just be sending money to people. At the end of the day, we don't know those that you are sending the money to, and where are the data? The ones you've done before under the conditional cash transfer, where are the people you send the money to? You heard when he was saying about where are their account numbers, where are their BVNs? So these things are the things that we must interrogate, not just to allow them to continue business as usual.
All right, well, thank you for coming on, Comrade Festus Osifo is the president of Trade Union Congress and Pengasin, as well as Comrade Joe Ajero, president of Nigeria Labour Congress. Gentlemen, thank you for coming on today.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
All right.
A lot of messages, Chamberlain. I was about to start. Anyway, never mind what I was about to do. Professor Nakena says, fuel subsidies, a rogue regime of corruption that is responsible for the dearth and paucity of funds to invest in economic diversification and deregulation. Subsidy removal will free funds for development of infrastructure, fund affordable post-secondary education, create a guaranteed mortgage sector tied to a single-digit interest rate on borrowing, curtail double-digit inflation. He says we must insist on total transparency on the implementation of PIB that insists on privatization of the sector. We must demand monthly accountability of all our income and expenditure, especially now we operate TSA, to quell this distrust between government and the governed.
Well, look at this one from Wale Olayinka. It's an email, and he says about removal of subsidy. Obviously, the government has quickly acted on the easiest but painful solution in their desperation to increase revenue and block revenue leakages. There are so many ways the country loses revenue. A, crude theft. No one is looking at blocking this leakage, which is far more than subsidy cost. B, Orasanya's report on MDAs. Implement this to the letter and the country saves 25% of its cost. C, national budgeting padding. If I'm the president, the national budget, after passing through the budget office and National Assembly, will be given to the 5 big accounting firms in the country to pick out duplicated projects, padded items to reduce it. D, tax/import waivers, pioneer status given to big companies and individuals that are not good for the economy. The common people should not be made to pay for the inefficiencies of government agencies, as this policy affects everybody, not only civil servants, but the government is planning to, he says, ameliorate its effects. That's from Wale Olayinka.
Well, we see your mails. Well, we'll see your mails, your tweets rather, Festus Akimboiwa and Olagunjo Oladile. Thank you so much, and keep writing in. And that's it on the program today. I am Bukola Koka. I'm Ayo Makinde. There's a lot more on Twitter if you want to enjoy them. Have a wonderful day.
Goodbye, Amal Kwelgu Yusuf.
I'm Chamberlain, so have a good day.